Name lottery is coming from the Netherlands, or the Dutch word lot, which
Wow.
means fate in English.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vince Ang. I'm the general manager of the Filipino Times, and I am your guest host for today's episode of Millionaire podcast. And we have a very exciting episode for today, and we'll be discussing it together with the CEO of Millionaire, Ralph Martin. Hi,
Hello.
Ralph. And of course, our episode for today is entitled History of Lotteries and Where It All Began. So, Martin, tell me, when did the lottery started?
Well, it's a long history, and give me a guess. I mean, what do you think? How old lotteries are?
Probably when humans started counting.
Yeah, probably. I would say, like, when it comes to gambling in general, I mean, it's probably like from the Stone Ages, and where like people were playing games. But the lottery, as we know it today, started around about like 2,400, 2,500 years ago.
Wow.
And the first documentation we have on lotteries, as we know it today, was like from the Chinese. And in one of the former podcasts, I already mentioned that the Chinese have the only difference between gambling laws and lottery laws. All the others are using the same gambling laws or regulations for both of them. But the Chinese started the lottery round about 200 before BC, before Christ. And that's so it's 2,400 years old. And they started it, the Han dynasty, they started this to finance the Great Wall. Actually, that's so they had like a course to make money. So I assume they sold the tickets to the people, and they were happy to give money to win a big prize. And that's how the dynasty, basically the Han dynasty, made money to pay for the Great Wall.
So how after China, like how did it spread the world?
And from China, the next thing we figured out or we know is like that it spread to the Roman Empire, and they had raffle draws, more like raffle draws for their big feasts and parties. They had like so the guests were getting like raffle tickets, and at the end, like somebody won. It was more for entertainment. At this point, it was not meant to make money with it. It was just for entertainment. And after that, the next report is when it came to, they called it at this time the Low Countries, which was like Netherlands and Belgium. Um, and it started there. And there it was the first time when it became a business, more or less. Yeah.
But I think what we've noticed is that lottery is more of a celebration. It really partners with the celebration. The business side happens after.
Right.
But so could you tell me more about what happened to the transformation from being part of parties and celebration to actual lottery that we have experienced today?
Well, I believe that the lottery was a really big income source for whoever run the lottery, let's say. I mean, we are talking about national or government or state lotteries. So they invented this, for example, as I mentioned before, like in the 1500s, again, to finance, for example, the walls of the city in the Netherlands, for example, or in Belgium. They also supported the poor people. And this was more or less like just another tax, I would say. So the people were hoping to win, and obviously they bought the tickets, and somebody eventually won one in a time. But talking about the Netherlands, because the name lottery is coming from the Netherlands, or the Dutch word lot, which
Wow.
means fate in English.
That's
So
interesting
that's
because that's how we play lottery anyway. It's by
Right.
fate.
Yeah, it's 100%. And that was the first time actually the name lottery was mentioned before. in when I mentioned China, at this time it was more like a Keno game, not the modern lottery we know now, but Keno. I mean, we still play Keno in a lot of cities like Las Vegas and Macau and all these places. Yeah, but that's I think that's it's always interesting that at this point even it started to have a social cause, like supporting the poor people, having money for the poor people.
Do you have any idea how it started? Like these lotteries starting to give back to the community?
The business reason is, I mean, if you obviously if you cannot win, or if you don't win anything, or you don't get anything, then you wouldn't buy a ticket. So that's I would say, like, this is a reason why people are buying the ticket. They want to change their life. That's the only reason. A lottery is not gambling. A lottery is less entertaining. Like the Romans did it for entertainment, but later on it became like pure, I want to get out of my miserable life, let's say. And I, like if I win the lottery, they provide, I can change my lifestyle and security for my family and whatever it is. There are other interesting facts, like for example, then later on, Queen Elizabeth in England started a lottery, and they also did it like for like for war reasons, more or less, to finance like the harbors, to build it. Also interesting, the lottery was funding the I think the British Museum also at this time. And when she sold the tickets, the first time when they started selling the tickets in England, that was like around the 1600s. They started selling it in St. Paul's Cathedral.
Okay.
That means not outside; they were selling it inside. So this time, people did not have an issue with lotteries at all, right? We were selling it even in the church. And obviously, it gives credibility.
Exactly.
100%.
It matches the idea of faith.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Now coming back to that. But it's really interesting how this all develops and spread over the world. And the next step, I would say, was in the United States, also for good causes. That was like roundabout in the 1800s. We already had this modern lotteries with numbers, pick some numbers out of whatever, and having the draws, or having this, and based on probabilities. And in the US, when they started, they funded, for example, the Ivy colleges or schools, like the big eight well-known universities now, like Harvard and Yale and name it, like this.
No Ivy League.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, again, for the good cause, for these kind of things, and again, obviously, to finance some civil war issues, like, I mean, it's always like, that's where countries burn money, right?
But it's very interesting. You mentioned that it's in the US, like where they started using the present format of lottery, where you do bet on numbers and probability. But how does lottery plays before that? Do you have any idea?
I mean, first of all, when you look on lotteries today, or when we are talking about lotteries, we always in our industry, we are talking about two different types of lotteries. One is called the active lottery and the passive lottery. The active lottery is like where you choose your numbers, let's say. When it comes to Millionaire, for example, then you choose your 7 numbers, right? And then there's a draw, and you have to match the numbers. And depending how many correct numbers you have, you win a smaller or bigger prize. But at the end of the day, you only play for the jackpot, for the big prize. Now, when it comes to the passive lottery, then this is a raffle draw. We have it here, like in the region. For example, the big ticket is one very old, established passive lottery. Obviously, it's a draw, but it's a passive lottery because you buy a ticket and somebody is just picking one of the tickets and he's winning. But it's actually the same. I mean, you have like probabilities behind it. I mean, not everybody in a draw is winning, and not everybody in a raffle draw is not everybody is not winning in a raffle draw, and not everybody or just a few people are winning in the passive, the active lottery.
Well, all right, you mentioned about how lotteries spread in some parts of the world, but how did it reach the Middle East?
And the Middle East is very interesting because we know that, for example, the Egyptian society, like in with the pharaohs, thousands of years ago, already were exploring these kind of gambling things, but not reportedly lotteries, I would say. But in the recent times, we have the still established lotteries in Lebanon. It started in around about 1950, so we have it like already 70 years in place, right? So and it's very well known, obviously, between the Lebanese people, and it's still running. And uh, and then the second big lottery we had like was a national lottery in Egypt, and it started in 1970, so already 50 years ago. Obviously, in the meantime, it stopped again. But you see, I mean, it's even in these kind of countries where of the Middle East, it's a very nice way to get the people involved and making money again.
What would you say, like in the course of history,
Yeah,
is the motivation really coming from people who wants to change their lives, or it's just really from the people who's into betting on fate?
it's an interesting question. It's more like philosophy, I would say, right? I mean, now, um, I mean, when you buy a ticket, or Vince, if you would buy a ticket, why do you buy the ticket? I guess
Well,
you
my motivation is really to change my life.
see that, and I think that's especially in the old days. I mean, today we have like social security systems, right, to catch up. I mean, we are not losing. I mean, we might lose our job, we might lose our house or whatever, but at the end of the day, society is taking care of us somehow. In the old days, it wasn't like that. When we are talking about like, I mean, 2,400 years ago, I mean, what happened 2,400 years ago? This and the Romans and everyone, if you didn't have anything, I mean, basically you were starving. So this was a really big motivation to change your life, to maybe to even move up in society later on. Not being one of the poor people, but being one of the, let's say, middle class. I don't even know if they had a middle class at this time, but I suppose they had.
Well,
Yeah.
what can you give me a little bit more of something unique or interesting thing that happened in the history that were related to lottery?
Well, in when the Italians, for example, when it started like in Venice, these there were like a couple of big families, of course, um, and they were also afraid that the poor people starting a riot against them. So that's why they also like put the lottery in place to keep them more or less quiet. You say like, hey, you have the same chance, like, or you have a chance if you participate in the lottery, even to move up and be one of us, or well, maybe not like them, but closer to their society's level, let's say. So that kept the people of like being quiet and having this hope in changing something instead of like being violent and on the streets and whatever. Uh, so there are always like different aspects, of course. But I think this is also interesting to know that um, you can you can give the people hope, and if people have hope, they probably can get along with their life a lot better when they have like, yeah, whatever, not as decent as we assume everybody should have.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's for the people, but let's talk about a bit more of the changes or the motivation or the drive of the companies or the government who's running these lotteries, right? Like all throughout the history, it was connected with celebration, with causes for wars and all that, or infrastructure. With the current players in the industry, are we still looking at the same motivation of but because it's for an infrastructure or for a certain cause, or what would be the usual reason?
Well, I would say, I mean, obviously, if you starting a war, I mean, you need a lot of money, or even if you're doing any good, I mean, but and today the social causes are most important. I mean, it's not, we are not having wars, we are not financing wars anymore through lotteries, but we are doing a lot of social projects worldwide. I mean, every lottery is based on uh, or is connected, let's say, to a social cause. But in the old days, I mean, you can take it from the rich, of course, to a certain extent. You can put like some taxes on it, but if you want to have like everybody being involved, I mean, it's a lot easier to have like a couple of million people paying for it instead of like just whatever, maybe 5, 10 families. So if you collect the money and instead of like putting a tax on it, it's more convenient. It's not. It doesn't feel that bad, right? Um, and that's I think that's why the lotteries are so important, or were commercialized, let's say.
Mhm.
And of course, when it comes to the lottery idea, it's always you pay a very kind of low amount of money to win a very huge and big prize. That's different with gambling. Gambling, you are putting small money, but you're winning small money.
Mm.
and but I mean, and it's more like entertaining and stuff like that. Lotteries, even if a lottery in Rome, let's say, for entertaining, is not entertaining because
Mm.
maybe you enter the villa, the Roman villa, like you get a
Yeah.
lottery ticket, but then nothing happens until the draw.
Mm-hmm.
Gambling is different. Gambling is always like entertaining and,
Yeah.
and excitement, and I'm tense to win and changing my strategy maybe, like with roulette or whatever, like slot machines.
But are you seeing any like advancements or changes on how we're gonna play lottery in the future?
Yeah, the biggest changes are obviously that we are having like digital media or digital tools now to play the lottery. I mean, before you had to buy physically a lottery ticket or picking your numbers or filling out a form or whatever it is. Today we have like all these smartphones, we have laptops, so we can participate much easier. So I know that the industry is still growing because of that. That people have easy access to it, and we still have the same goal. I mean, like before, like you said it. I play it for the jackpot. I want to change my life. I have a dream.
It's good because I've seen O Millionaire adapting to that changes as well, reaching more people worldwide as well.
Right.
So for all of you viewers there, we're very, very happy to see you again. Our next episode, I'm pretty sure we'll have more exciting news for you, more exciting information for you. So stay tuned